These are the video solutions for calculating the slope for example 1 and 2. So first I'm going to show you how to calculate the slope using the equation for slope, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I will then also show you kind of a little bit of an easier method for some where you just compare the rise over the run, and that's what I'll do afterwards. So when you are looking to calculate the slope of a graph, the lower point is going to represent your x1 and y1 coordinates. So remember, it's always in xy format when we are listing the coordinates for a point on a graph. And then this is going to represent x2, y2. So with the slope equation, and m is just the letter that we use to represent slope, we're just going to plug in our coordinates exactly as listed. So y2 is going to be represented by the number 7. y1 is going to be represented by the number 2. x2 is represented by 13. And x1 is represented by 4. And now we start to simplify so that I get a slope of 5 over 9. So if this were a distance time graph, instead of listing your answer in fraction form, I would prefer if you simplify further. And that way you just divide in your calculator 5 divided by 9. And you would get 0.56 as your slope. So technically either answer is acceptable, but when we are doing it for a distance time graph, I prefer if you have your answer in decimal form. Now, one other way that some students do find it a little bit easier to find the slope without plugging in all of these numbers, we do what's called rise over run. So what you want to do is look at how much did you go up on the y-axis by. So from 2 to 7, that gives us a difference of 5. And from 4 to 13, that gives us a difference of 9. And then we get that same answer, 5 over 9. So again, you're looking at how much did you go up on the y-axis by, that's my rise. How much did you go over on the x-axis by, that's my run. And that for some is a little bit of just a quicker way of determining what the slope is. And I'll show you again how to do that on the next example. So now when you have a graph like this with multiple coordinates, the cool thing about calculating slope is that regardless of which two coordinates you pick, you'll always get the same answer. So you can pick any of these two coordinates to determine the slope of your line. So let's start by doing the slope equation, and then we'll also look at the rise over run method. So let's say I picked these two coordinates. So this is going to be x1 and y1, x2, y2. So now I'm just going to plug it in so that it's 6 minus 5, and then it's 4 minus 3. And this one is pretty nice because we get a simple answer of 1 for our slope. But also, if you were using the rise over run method, you could see that I go up on my y-axis by 1, and I go over on my x-axis by 1. And again, I get the same answer. And now let's try it with two other coordinates. So from this coordinate to this coordinate, I go up by 1, I go over by 1. And again, I get the same slope. So if you find the rise over run method to be easier, then I recommend doing that. Otherwise, you can always plug into the slope equation as well. And lastly, when this is a distance time graph, so when we are looking at calculating the slope of a distance time graph, this answer for slope would actually give us the speed of an object. And of course, then we would have units in our answer as well, such as meters per second, miles per hour. But that is why it's critical that moving forward with this lesson, you at least have an understanding of how to calculate slope.